Especially, we welcome our friends visiting us on Zoom today. We're glad you're here. To that end, folks in the meeting house, if you could turn your phones off or put them on airplane mode, silence them at the least, we'd appreciate it. That helps clear up the bandwidth so those visiting us virtually can hear and see us. So our first hymn for the day is Worship and Song number 197, How Firm a Foundation. Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. I'm Amanda. We are fresh out of accompanists on piano today, and so it's going to be an interesting and unique day. So, I am the first to be honest enough that I'm not proficient enough on the piano, and I'm ashamed to say, even as a music teacher, to accompany you well, but I can bring to the table my flute skills. So I'm gonna play through the melody of this hymn the first time through, just flute all the way, and then we're gonna sing just the first 3 verses. I know there are 7, but we'll save our gusto for the rest of those for another day when we're not trying things a cappella, okay? So I'll play it on the flute, I'll give you the starting pitch, and then I'll lead you singing the rest of it. If you are someone fancy who loves to add in your harmony, maybe just keep the first verse in unison, and if we're doing great, feel free, break into it, okay? So here we go. This is How Firm a Foundation. Go ahead and stand as you're able. I'll play through the first time just so you can listen, and then we'll sing. And thank you for your grace and your patience. Everybody.
So realizing that I'd be on facing bench today and have to give some kind of centering thought in front of a group of people whom I admire, this past week I sort of kept an ear out for anything that might be inspiring or worthwhile to share. Well, the end of the week came and I got nothing. Big fat 0 in the inspiration bin. So I called Phil and asked him what his message would be about. And he told me he'd be talking about the importance of choosing good relationships. And thankfully that reminded me of something my therapist had told me that I'd like to explore a little bit with you this morning. See, he has a working theory, a kind of rule of thumb about discerning a good relationship from a bad relationship. Good relationships by nature increase our choices in life. They show us more possibilities. They broaden our horizons. while bad relationships seem to reduce our choices. Our horizons shrink and our freedoms are restricted. So let's think about that. Good relationships, whether with friends, family, or partners, make us feel supported and respected. In these relationships, we feel safe to explore our interests and try new things. This support helps us become more confident, and open to new opportunities. Good relationships inspire us to grow and learn and discover new aspects about the world and ourselves, ultimately expanding our horizons and increasing our sense of freedom. Good relationships let us talk openly and honestly. This helps us understand different viewpoints and learn new things, so it broadens our horizons and shows us the many possibilities that are in life. So, good relationships afford us more choices and a greater sense of freedom. Bad relationships, on the other hand, make us feel controlled and unhappy. They'll involve criticism, lack of support, emotional manipulation. In these types of relationships, we might be afraid to ask, to take risks or follow our dreams. And our world feels smaller and our choices are more limited. Also, bad relationships can consume our time and energy, leaving little room for personal pursuits and self-discovery. When we're constantly dealing with conflict, drama, and emotional turmoil, we can find ourselves neglecting our own needs and passions. This can lead to a sense of stagnation, a loss of identity, and a shrinking world. So, rule of thumb, good relationships give us more choices in life. Bad relationships give us fewer choices. I don't think that's such a bad working theory. So as we center down this morning, take a moment and hold up this rule of thumb to your own relationships. Do your relationships give you more choices in your life or fewer? Now, friends, it's time for any announcements to share with the group. We'll start with our friends on Zoom, and be sure to unmute yourselves if you have any announcements to share. I don't see anyone speaking up on Zoom, so we'll open it up to those in the meeting house. Please share any announcements we have. And one more note for the folks in the meeting house, please say your names to the folks on Zoom.
Good morning, I'm Becky Horton. This announcement is on behalf of Outreach. On Sunday, June 2nd, Jim Mulholland, who is the director of COCODA, will be here giving information and discussing, and I always get this wrong, so I have my paper. It is the Rural Dreamers Scholarship Fund. And this scholarship is to help college and university students in Nicaragua. So he'll be here giving lots more information about that. He'll be here during chat room from 9:30 to 10:20, and then he'll do about a 5-minute or so presentation during regular meeting. Outreach is going to be having a special collection to help support the scholarship, and in the past, Fairfield has been very generous. And Randy and I are sustaining supporters of this organization. We give monthly, so it's a very worthy cause. So Jim gives a phenomenal presentation. Last year he had videos, that kind of thing. I think there were interviews with some of the students that had received these scholarships, so that's Sunday, June 2nd.
Hi, my name is Bill Smith, and I'm stepping in for Ann Tarvin to remind everyone that we're going to have an ice cream social on the same day, June 2nd, and that'll be right after worship, and there'll be a light lunch and then ice cream. And we're piggybacking on to that with the 1892 Meeting House. We're going to have an open house in the 1892 Meeting House for those who want to go visit it. As we move forward with the removal of that building, we need to say our last goodbyes to it. Some have expressed an interest in obtaining mementos from that building, so you need to go look at the building and try and see what you might want to have from that building. So, thank you.
If you have mold allergies, avoid the tour because they're pretty significant over there.
This is, Bill, it is important to make it clear this is the sanctuary
So point of clarification for our folks on Zoom, the tour will only be the sanctuary. Okay. And that those with mold allergies may not want to go on the tour because the mold is significant.
Anita Kamek, and apparently neither Randy nor I was here last week to give an announcement that we'll have our meeting for business today, and that will be at the Rise of Worship, give or take 15 or 20 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sue Walton, and I'm wearing my double hats as well today. Hey, I introduced Tom Ham for chat, talking about the Klan and Quakers in Indiana and our history at chat. At 3 o'clock, Tom and his wife will be at the Sugar Grove Meeting House for talking about Quakers and our history in Indiana. And if you'd like to join the people of the Sugar Grove conservative group that meets unprogrammed at 2 o'clock, you're welcome. But Tom will be speaking at 3, and I can announce that we will be Zooming that as well. If you're interested, if you can't make it, we're also going to try to record that. And we did record the chat today so that those things will be available later on. Thank you.
Friends, let us pray. Oh God, we thank you for this day and for this community. We are grateful this morning for so much, for beautiful music that elevates our spirits, for loving neighbors who come to our aid, for people who pray for us and think of us when we are facing difficulties. Oh God, the warmth of fellowship, the presence of dear friends is such an enduring gift, and we are grateful. We remember especially this morning those in our community and in our wider world who are suffering. We remember especially this morning the people of Ukraine and Gaza. And all those who are victims of our failure to love one another deeply. Oh God, may all of us live in such a way so that all your children everywhere are the recipient of human love. Crush within us, O God, the urge for revenge. Teach us, O God, to forgive and to love and to carry ourselves with dignity and grace, and to extend that same dignity and grace to all people everywhere. We are grateful this morning for Tom Ham, for his dedication to scholarship and for his willingness to share it so widely so that our lives can be better informed and improved. We ask, O God, for the elevation of wisdom in our nation and our deliverance from fears which subject us to tyrants and those who claim that life is so easy if we just do what they tell us to do. Oh God, spare us from easy answers and those who claim to have them. Place in our hearts a desire to know and learn more, to understand more deeply your world and all those in it. This is our prayer today, O God. Amen. Well, I think now we collect food, but John, you wanted to say something?
So this is our time when we collect our food, and I just wanted to share this. So as we pause for this offering of food, please remember that your support helps keep the meeting an inviting, safe, and productive place. Your donations provide for office supplies, building services, utilities, insurance, general maintenance, landscaping, and technology. And donations may be left in the offering plates at the back or on our website, fairfieldfriends.org. Thank you. We could have some folks bring up some baskets to collect food. We'd appreciate it.
Oh, it's good to be here this morning and get to spend some time with Madeline, our grandfather's joy. One of the things Joanne and I have always enjoyed is antiquing. So when we renovated her family's farmhouse and had to furnish it, we went to Gulley's Antique Mall there west of Plainfield. In search of a chest of drawer for the downstairs bedroom, we found this beautiful handmade cherry wood chest with a hidden drawer in it that I discovered later when I got it home and was looking all over it. And so we bought that. And when we got it home, I was going all through it, searching for names, and I found underneath one of the drawers the signature of the man who had built it. He'd signed his name, Thomas Newby, Newcastle, Indiana, 1832. What a wonderful discovery. And the name leapt out at me, Newby. I thought, oh, he had to have been a Quaker because that was a very common Quaker surname in that era and location. But I wasn't sure, so I called our resident expert, Tom Ham, who is with us this morning, to see if he knew anything at all about this man, and it turns out he did. Thomas Newby had been a local furniture maker who had then, as he became more successful, opened a factory to manufacture and produce furniture, and in the process had become very successful. Then had done something so inexplicably evil that he was read out of meeting or disowned. It was a tragic story, a spectacular fall from grace. He had fallen in love with a Methodist and married her. I don't know what would possess a man of Newby's character to do that, but there you go. Sometimes you think you know a person, and then they go crazy and marry a Methodist. But these things happen. Now, I've made no secret of my affection for Quakerism, but in recent messages, I've been reflecting on our less stellar moments. We've called this series, What in the World Were We Thinking? Surely one of our less thoughtful customs was our propensity for expelling those friends who married outside the Quaker faith. Their intentions were good. Friends believed confining marriage to a fellow Quaker enhanced the chances for marital happiness and success. Each person would meet with their respective meeting, who would help discern their readiness and suitability for marriage. Letters would be exchanged between the meetings involved, and hopefully a marriage would result. Today, this function is largely left to the pastor in those meetings which have pastors, but before we had pastors, it was a function of the meeting, the congregation. In some unprogrammed Quaker meetings today, it is common for couples to have what is called a meeting for clearness for the purpose of marriage. Friends no longer, I am pleased to report, disown someone for marrying outside our faith, though we do require them to buy the pastor a new car. Just throwing that out there. A few interesting historical tidbits. See, I knew Tom was going to be here, and it got me interested in Quaker history, so I've spent part of the week delving into these little arcane facts of Quakerism. In Quaker meetings in Pennsylvania from the year 1682 to 1776, 4,925 Quakers were disowned for marrying contrary to our discipline. It was far and away the most common reason for disownment, followed by 1,311 cases of persons fornicating with their fiancé, followed by 727 cases of other types of fornication. The mind reels. Never let it be said that life in a Quaker meeting was boring. Other offenses included the use of profanity, excessive debt, lying, enslaving, quarreling, fraud, and theft. 22 friends were disowned for holding public offices that entailed activity contrary to Quaker ethics. Boy, don't you wish that could happen again? While we Friends no longer forbid mixed religious marriages, it is still a common practice among many faiths, resulting in expulsion or penalty for the offenders. As for me, I stand on the side of self-regulation, not church regulation. Grown adults should be free to choose their life partners. When I began dating Joanne 42 years ago, I was counseled by our pastor against marrying her. I thanked him for his concern, but frankly, Joanne was the only woman who ever agreed to go on a second date with me, so I felt I had no choice but to marry her. And so we married to my great benefit. And to be fair, her mother advised her not to marry me. Self-regulation, choosing our relationships carefully and thoughtfully, and not just our marriage relationships, but also our friendships. When Joanne and I and the boys moved back to Danville 26 years ago now, I began bumping into people whom I had known growing up, some of whom wanted to resume our friendship, which I was happy to do. But I soon realized that some of them were still infected with the same racism, homophobia, and sexism that had poisoned our earlier lives. So I would discuss that with them, and some of them took it to heart, and others of them didn't. And it became clear to me whose friendship I wanted and whose friendship I could do without. I saw an article this past week that showed dogs, pictures of dogs and their owners, noting the similarities in their appearances. Apparently, if we have an animal, we begin to look like it after a while. So it advised us to choose our pets carefully. I think it's more likely that we start to look and think like our friends, that after a while, their mindset becomes our mindset, their virtues, our virtues, their vices, our vices. I have seen in my lifetime many marriages that checked every box in religious compatibility, marriages that carried the church's seal of approval. But in many of those marriages, I saw women diminished and degraded, children stunted and deprived, and men misshaped by unchecked power and authority. Here is the real effect of our Quaker campaign for marital conformity, that for close to 100 years, perhaps longer, we weeded from our ranks the bravest and wisest persons. We punished friends whose only fault was love, and rewarded the docile, the compliant, the conformist. I believe this decision had such a grievous effect on Quakerism that we suffer from it still. For no great and lasting movement has ever been built on the cornerstones of compliance and coercion. This is why, should you decide to become a member of this Quaker community, if you wish to marry us, we will not require your assent to a creed or your yes to a set of beliefs. We will not insist you believe a certain thing about Jesus. We ask only that you commit yourself to your moral and ethical growth and the moral and ethical growth of this beloved community. We do not ask you to marry the right person. We ask you to be the best person you can be, the best friend, the best partner, the best parent, the best child. We ask only that you love one another and thereby fulfill the law. It was, in my estimation, a sad day in Quakerism when Thomas Newby was disowned for loving a Methodist woman. How much better it would have been if his fellow friends had affirmed his marriage, had shared his joy, and commended his decision to love. How much better it would have been for him, for Quakerism, and for the world. So friends, wherever you see love, wherever you see it, in any expression, it is your job, our task, to say yes to that, to affirm that which makes us better people, loving and caring deeply for those who aren't like us.
If all hearts are clear, we'll sing our closing hymn, which is Worship and Song number 185, Amazing Grace. Please stand if you're able.
You can sit down for a second, because I'm going to read something to you, and I don't want to make you stand through all that. Okay, if you didn't know, I've said this before, but at the back of this hymnal, there's little bits of history about each piece, and I think if you've never heard this about Amazing Grace, it's worth the read and worth the listen, especially on this day of history and love and the ways that love and grace have changed so many hearts and history for the better. Some friends are uncomfortable singing the words, "A wretch like me," in Newton's first verse. They may be unaware that John Newton, poorly educated, a blasphemer, and non-believer, was in the slave trade in Africa and then the captain of a slave trading vessel before his conversion experience during a storm at sea in 1748. He later gave up seafaring, returned to England, and spent 9 years studying Hebrew and Greek and preparing for the ministry with the encouragement of John Wesley and George Whitefield. He went on to become one of the greatest leaders of the evangelical movement in the Church of England. Less dramatic and more typically Quaker was John Woolman's recognition 5 years earlier that he could no longer, as a bookkeeper, write a deed of conveyance of a slave, although he had previously done so. As long as we're blind to our own complicity in current evils, we share some measure of Newton's wretchedness. In the Bible, the word grace is found preponderantly in the letters of Paul, who uses it to describe God's generosity in allowing salvation by faith alone, despite a bad performance record. The tune used here has appeared with these words in Southern Appalachian shape note hymnals, which ironically and interestingly enough, our first piece was also a shape note piece originally. The tune is an old one, probably of Scottish origin, in a pentatonic scale, meaning it can be played using only the 5 black keys of the keyboard. Shape note singers traditionally use the older, purer intervals of the pentatonic mode and avoid keyboard accompaniment, which is so fitting for today when we're going to be singing it with the flute. Just an idea, I'm gonna try playing the flute with you as the accompaniment this time. Hopefully that won't throw you off too much. I'll still play through the first verse by myself, and then you guys feel free to come in, but I'll try to do a little, here we go. And it's all you guys. I'll just be backing you up. So let's rise as you're able. And Amazing Grace number 185. Okay, I'll play first.
When my father passed away, we were sorting through all of his keepsakes, things that we'd wanted to see as a child, as children, but weren't permitted to. And then he died, and everything he'd kept hidden from us over the years was ours to see. It was fascinating. One of the things we came across was a letter written by his uncle on the occasion of my father's marriage to my mother. His uncle warned him, don't marry a Catholic. The Pope will take your children. He had heard this. It began with the words, I have heard the Pope will take your children. And I read that line and I had two thoughts. That after having 5 children in 6 years, my father would have been elated if the Pope had taken his children. That was my first thought. My second thought is a thought that continues with me. How many lies have followed the words, I have heard? I have heard, and then a lie. And I'm sure those old Quakers were saying, I have heard this about Methodists. And today there are people in our nation who are saying, I have heard this about immigrants. I have heard this about black people. I've heard this about Hispanics. And all of it's a lie. So friends, 2 things. When you catch yourself saying, I have heard, pause. Pause. And when you hear someone else say, I have heard, listen carefully and speak truth to the lies you hear. Turn and greet, friends. Thank you, John.